Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event. Fight fans worldwide, you've tuned into the #1 undisputed boxing podcast today. This is the Boxing Breakdown. Now, your heavy-handed, hard-hitting host, Mark Roxey.
What's up? And welcome to another edition of the Boxing Breakdown, our anniversary edition. This is the 30th episode, and I am so excited to be here today and to be with you. So thanks for listening in, and thanks for all that you do to help us promote the amazing Boxing Breakdown. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube at The Boxing Breakdown. And if you'd like more information about this production, it's created by the Roxey Sports Entertainment Group at roxysportsentertainment.com. And you can find information there about management, advisory services, coaching services, and training services. So go check it out. And there is an entire page dedicated on the website to the Boxing Breakdown. You can see all of the episodes. Again, 29 past episodes. And today is our 30th episode. So thank you. If you've been on the ride the entire time, thanks once again. This is a podcast that was born out of my participation in a leadership program for working with fighters and training athletes of all types, including dancers, ballet dancers at the highest level. And I went to a leadership program, and one of the things that came out of that leadership program was, the instructor asked, so like, what is it that you have always wanted to do, but you just never got around to doing it, and you made excuses for not doing it, right? And so I sat there and I thought about it for a while, and one of the things, among a lot of other things, was I've always wanted to do this podcast. And so, I'm parlaying my 30, 40 years of experience fighting and growing up on the streets fighting and boxing in the boxing gym and studying all types of martial arts and training fighters and managing fighters and pretty much dabbling in almost every area of the sport. I thought, I really want to do this podcast because I think that there's a lot of information that I might have in my head, and folks that I know in the field, personalities and fighters that might want to be able to come on to the program and basically contribute to you, those of you that are listening in, to get a deeper understanding on what's involved in the sport and questions you might have that we can delve into. So if you do have a question or you have a topic idea that you'd like us to explore, please feel free to email us at roxysportsentertainment@gmail.com. And again, you can find us on the website at roxysportsentertainment.com. And I'm happy to include any topics you might have. So that being said, I'd like to get into this episode. And, it's an interesting time because it's a time where we've all in the last year been in a pandemic, and it kind of put us all at zero, basically, is what I'm trying to say. We all were moving and grooving and barely had time to think about who we are and what we want to do in boxing and out of boxing, in our careers and in our family lives. And so it's really been a great opportunity for all of us to kind of sit back and figure this out. And for many of you, I know you have done that. And for others, maybe you haven't had the time to do that, or, something's in your way there. But during COVID-19, for the boxing world, for the sport of boxing, a lot of issues have come up relating to contracts and, sponsorship agreements, management contracts, training contracts, promotional contracts. And, for people that litigate this kind of stuff, it's been a very, very busy year. So I thought I would invite Paul Haberman, Esquire, one of the noted boxing attorneys, to come on the program and kind of talk about stuff that he's been seeing in his business as he litigates cases relating to COVID-19 and other disputes that have come out of this pandemic. And then finally, we're going to get into another topic on the heels of what I would say has been shocking news, actually really phenomenal for the Teofimo Lopez team in that Thriller just basically jumped in on a purse bid and was able to secure Teofimo's upcoming fight with George Camboza. And so we're going to get into that. And I know a lot of you guys out there don't even know what a purse bid is or how it works. So my dear friend and associate Paul Haberman is here with us in the studio. So Paul Haberman, Esquire, what's up? What's up? What's up?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good.
How have you been? Long time no hear.
Yes, indeed. Can't complain, all told.
I know. I'm following you, though. I follow you on social media, and I see all your stuff. It's wonderful, wonderful stuff. And man, I am so excited to catch up with you because I have a lot of things. We have a lot of things to talk about. First off, how's the family?
Oh, all good. Thank you. Thank you. How's everybody in your part of town?
Oh, everybody's good. My wife is great. The kids are great. And, boxing is great. Training is great and everything's good. I really can't complain. I'm working with a couple of really nice fighters and, I'm just really, I'm feeling like this whole, I don't know if I'm getting used to COVID-19 and just the way things are. Yeah, there's a little bit of that and a lot of just, kind of living into the future of what's possible, what could be in the future, and just kind of trying to create all kinds of great things, including the Boxing Breakdown. And really, this is going to be, Paul Haberman, you are on the 30th episode. So congratulate. Okay. Yeah, man, this is our 30th episode. So super excited that you're the guest and really interested in this notion about COVID-19 anyway. So while we're talking about COVID-19, I wanted to kind of ask you, like, in the boxing world, there's a lot of fights going on. If you look at the bubble, I mean, I've been to the bubble and, all the top promoters are fighting, but all the little guys are really not. I mean, there's tons of fighters that are not able to participate. They're barely training. And the ones that are able to train are usually in the South or, down in Florida or somewhere like that. And so it's really just a very complex web of what is possible in each state. But what I know is happening is there's gotta be a lot of legal issues that are coming up out of as a result of COVID-19. And I really wanted to ask you, the boxing attorney, what are you seeing?
Well, I think with COVID-19, especially in the earlier months, to your what you were saying before, people are starting to slowly get used to the reality. But a couple of issues. I mean, first, there's some promoters that are still straight up not staging shows, and obviously, all things equal, you have boxers under contract that have been guaranteed, at least in normal times, a certain number of fights per year. Now, what you're finding as a result in that situation is, at least for a time, a lot of promoters were tolling their agreements. And when I say tolling, I mean one client, for example, I know at least one promoter correspondingly was sending out letters throughout the summer months, basically saying, "We can't stage shows right now. We're going to consider. Sorry, a little tongue tied here. Consider your contract, tolled for X period of time until which point we are actually able to stage shows again and what have you." And so if you thought the clock was running now on a 3-year contract, all of a sudden, because of COVID, you're sitting 8 months because of a toll. The promoter is going to glue 8 more months onto the end of that contract when the world allows them to stage shows again. So there's been some pushback about that too. I mean, some of them.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about that. Okay, so let's do a role play, right? I have a fighter, and the fighter that I have is 15-0, or let's say 16-0, right? And he's signed with a promoter and a manager, and he is offered 3 fights a year. And so COVID-19 happens, everything gets shut down a year ago. And now my fighter that's supposed to fight 3 fights this year hasn't fought at all. And now, so the promoter says, we're going to basically stop your contract due to COVID-19, and we'll pick it up right where we left off at a time period when COVID is over. Is that correct? So if that is the scenario, what would you advise me at that point? If I guess before I ask you that question, I guess to be fair to you, there's two scenarios, right? There's a scenario by which the fighter is happy and the fighter is fine to wait and continue on. And at that point, what do you do? Do you re-up his contract, or how would you handle a fighter that's happy with just, extending the contract?
Well, if the fighter's actually happy to extend it, you have your solution already. But what I've seen as a source of frustration is fighters that were keeping sort of an up tempo for pandemic. Obviously, that's going to put a damper in it anyway. At least will people figure things out early on. But then they start seeing, on top of the fact that they were sitting for a number of months, they start seeing that, other promoters are staging shows now. How come mine still isn't? What are you doing to get your fighters back active again? And that's where the frustration, talks of buyouts or whether the contract could be terminated or what have you might start coming. As but in some respects, it's not necessarily fair because it's not cheap to stage a show, in a bubble. You're losing a lot of economics.
It sounds to me, Esquire, like you're kind of leaning toward the defendant.
I can make both arguments. I really can. There's a lot of ground to cover there, but
so let's talk about the other fighter. So obviously, if the fighter is happy, understands the promoter, says, okay, we're going to just extend the contract. Then at that point, it's just a simple contract that gets rewritten and extended, right? And then that's a simple, that's like a 2-minute process, right? Then you
Could even be.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, it could even just be a letter,
Right.
You get a letter from the promoter. Please be advised, because of pandemic and our inability to stage shows that we're deeming the contract hold from March of 2020 until we tell you otherwise. And then so all of a sudden wherever the clock was running as of March of last year is where it's going to resume running when it's decided you could go again and stage shows which I think is increasingly happening. I mean, just looking at New York or New Jersey, the venues are starting to reopen limited capacity, so there's still going to be money lost, but it's going to be able to be staged. It's the same. So
right, but let's say I have a fighter. All right, the same fighter. He's 16-0. Right.
Uh-huh.
He's he's got a manager and he's got a promoter, and now the situation is a little different. Now the fighter isn't happy. The fighter sees that the promoter may be moving a couple of his guys on TV or moving that, the fighter in ways. And then he goes, but what about me? I'm not moving. So he gets a little uptight. And then what happens? Right. What happens next there?
Well, a couple of potential scenarios. I mean, one thing, especially if you're signed with a smaller promoter, because I feel like that's where this hypothetical would be more of a reality.
Right.
You'd have to almost say, listen, give me your, maybe not come out and say it, but basically say, I would take anything. Just give me something televised, give me something in a bubble. It might not be the most cautious move ever, but it'll get us back active, that.
Right.
That.
Yeah, a lot
of. As far as long term, it gets them off the couch. Long term, short term. At the same time, another thing that I've seen happen, and obviously promoters have to get calls for their fighters to do this too, or the managers at least, is because of the obvious volatility of the situation. There's also fighters that have gotten paid basically to be bench players, where they're told, these two guys are scheduled to fight, but if one of them falls out because of COVID, you're fighting, so we're going to pay you to sit there. That weekend, just in case something happens.
Yeah, and they get paid pretty darn well to sit there. So does the team.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about televised fights. When you're talking about televised fights, you almost have to have those standby guys. But does that count as a fight legally? I mean, because let's say I'm the promoter and I ask you to fight. Right, you're going to go and you're going to sit. Right. And if somebody gets sick or they need you in, you're going to go out there, you're going to get paid. So that's not technically or legally considered an actual fight. So how does that work?
Well, it's an interesting argument to be made because a lot of times the argument from the promoter is simply that they've made you a bona fide offer. But, sometimes they count just written offers that a fighter rejects. But what happens if you've accepted and you're sitting and you get paid?
Right. What does that constitute? Does that constitute a fight? Or, I mean, I guess you could argue it either way. It would be a very expensive argument, but you could argue it.
I mean, it sort of depends on the super objective of the fighter in some respects. And then, then you have to see what court would buy what if you actually contested it. But the super objective is to get paid the equivalent of 5 fights per year, for example, and they are paid for riding the bench. That might count. On the other hand, the idea is, let's reduce your example a little. I'm a 6-0 fighter. I want to be active. I don't want to just get credit and paid for acting as if I'm ready. I actually want to be out there, whether I'm taking on humps or taking on risky ones, just to be active.
Right. Well, a lot of good fighters out there that are what you would call works in progress, working their way up, starting at the bottom. They've got 4 or 5 fights. A lot of these fighters have ended up trading in their caution just for the, I don't know if you want to call it the dopamine or, just for the idea that they can get a fight. They just want to fight, and a lot of fighters have lost because of that.
Yeah, but they definitely have. One unspoken upside of that too is if you're willing and able to do that during a pandemic, that's a fighter that a matchmaker or somebody else could rely on going forward also. So
yeah, that's a good
point. Be intangibles.
That's a very, very good point. In terms of fighters that are willing to fight during the worst of things, imagine what they're going to look like during the best of things, right?
when you say worse, you're not just talking about the pandemic. You're talking about no audience, no ticket money, maybe short money, for the fighters. I mean, obviously television is television, but I mean, they're still losing on the live gate. So
I mean, there's a lot of, unless you have a TV deal, you're out of business for right now. Unless you have a something like a $90 million, TV deal, for example, per year,
right.
You're out of business. If you got a deal like that, like Top Rank has, you might have a fighting chance, but otherwise I just don't see it. My question though to you is, how do you, when you get to a situation where there's an impasse and you have a promoter and a fighter that are in a dispute, a very real dispute, where the fighter has not fought all year and they were required to fight 5 times. Let's just throw that out, right? It's egregious, but they haven't fought 5 times. They have a contract. They're done. They don't even want to be in the contract. What happens next?
Well, in a typical year, you'd have a real grievance, and I've litigated things like that before. But a year like this, you go to court, promoter, or go to a mediator or somebody, and you might get sympathy because this is your main source of income, but the court would have to look at you and be like, do you remember what happened this year?
Well, I wonder, are you suggesting that the terms of a contract, in essence, are, they go thrown out of the window when you actually go to a court in the U.S. simply because of COVID-19, or does the court have to oblige the law? I mean, what is? Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting question because actually I have a lawsuit not related to boxing, but I represent the owners or the would-be owners of a gym that never opened in New York City because they entered into a lease agreement they entered into a 7-year lease 3 days before shelter in place.
Wow. Sorry.
And for whatever reason, I wish I'd represented them on that part, but for whatever reason, there was what's known as a force majeure clause, which is the most popular contract clause this year, which basically says, pandemic, war, vermin, whatever it is that prevents people from doing their business, that could result in a toll or termination of an agreement. That's what saves a lot of these promoters right now. Is a lot of them do have that force majeure clause. That's what it's called, where they're basically saying if the world's not allowing us to do our business for some reason, they can't be charged against us. Can't necessarily be charged against you either in the right situation.
Right. So that
is a remedy.
So that force majeure would be kind of like acts of God,
exactly.
State emergencies, things like that, snow emergency, weather, things like that, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's what saved at least some promoters from probably any liability during the pandemic, because you go to court and the court sees like, oh yeah, you have a force majeure clause. Right. And it's like, well, roll down from there. The next thing you'd want to try to do is claim as a defense to the enforceability of a contract, frustration of purpose. And when you talk about frustration of purpose, you're basically saying conditions have been created such that the entire reason that this contract was entered into has been so frustrated that we shouldn't be bound by the contract anymore.
Oh, wow.
And the problem with that, and this is what came up actually in my New York City gym case, at least so far, I have a challenge to the prior motion, but they basically said, well, you didn't sign a 1-year lease, you signed a 7-year lease. So you still have 6 years to get the benefit of the bargain if the world opens up again soon.
So in other words, yeah, I get that. So in other words, they're saying, okay, we're willing to write off in for the Boxing Breakdown listeners. In other words, they're willing to write off the 1 year, like take the 1 year, put it in the rears, and then just deal with the other 6 years, right?
Right. And if you move that if you think about that in terms of boxing, judge could say, well, you have a a 3-year contract with this manager or this promoter. Nobody really had the benefit of the bargain for the better part of a year, but you still have the bargain of the next 2 years, and he hasn't breached the next 2 years of the agreement because the next 2 years haven't happened yet.
Right. So forfeit the one and just deal with the two remaining.
Essentially, yeah, either that, or give the other one told and glued to the end of the next 2 years.
Right. Which is how we opened up this discussion, which is that they're going to, tack on the year that was just missed onto it'll be an extension onto the contract, the actual term of the contract.
Right. And you see that even in normal years, you see that in all sorts of contexts in boxing and other sports. Yeah, typically you'll see an injury or suspension toll in boxing where somebody gets knocked out and they're told they can't box for 60 days. The promoter might toll the agreement and say, we don't have the benefit of your services for another 60 or 80 days, whatever it is. Or likewise, if somebody gets knocked out and snaps their leg on the way down and they're out for 6 months,
right?
Both them and the promoter probably want the benefit of the full contract, but they're rehabbing for several months and none of them are making money on it. So
and that's a very, very real concern because you get in a situation where the fighter thinks it's an actual full year contract, but then you're out for 6 months of that. And, at the end of the year, they're like, okay, you're done. Thanks for sharing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That happens, right?
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of, either lawsuits or threats of lawsuits in boxing that are based almost exclusively on tolling misunderstandings, where nobody seems to understand where the contract began and ended because maybe they're feuding at one point, maybe there's a suspension at another point, maybe there's an injury at another point.
Right.
Nobody timely said to the fighter, by the way, we're tolling this until you recover or until you're back in fighting shape or until you're willing to fight or whatever else. So,
yeah. Well, that's why it's so important, folks out there that are listening to the Boxing Breakdown, especially if you're a young fighter or a young manager or a young trainer. Make sure you get the advice of a qualified boxing attorney because that's what's up. If you don't, you may be paying the price way down the road. Would you agree with that?
I would. Yeah. I've seen, I think I've said it before on when I was last on your podcast, you can't just be happy to be there.
Well, and it's funny since we titled our last podcast. If you haven't listened to it, folks, you can get, for those of you that are listening, the Boxing Breakdown, folks, if you haven't listened to the podcast, Paul Haberman Esquire was on an earlier podcast and it was absolutely, riveting and wonderful conversation that we had. And the title of the podcast was Don't Just Be Happy to Be There. And that's a note of caution to young fighters or managers as well, in the negotiations of very, important, subject matter relating to fighters and helping and protecting the fighters. And, it's funny because we also chatted that up when I was on, we did another Boxing Breakdown, with the, author of Protect Yourselves at All Times, Adrian Clark. And
okay.
We referenced the prior podcast. He had listened to your podcast and thought it was really great. And, yeah, so we were talking about that, folks. If you haven't listened to that, check it out because, again, Adrian offered up a lot of great advice for young fighters. And here we are again, and we get ourselves to a point, Paul, where we can actually jump into, I'd like to switch topics a little and just kind of chat with you about something else that just hit my radar. And I have like a 1,000 questions for you. And that is, I'm gonna key you in on my question, and then I'm gonna key in the audience on the question as well, which is that if you haven't seen the latest news, it is very, very big news, and I'll try to see if I can articulate what that news is properly, which is that Teofimo Lopez he's the unified champion of the world. And he basically entered in a purse bid for a mandatory fight that was ordered by I believe it was a WBC against.
I think IBF took the lead on that one, actually.
Thank you. The IBF. Thanks for the correction. IBF, excuse me. And that's right. And against George Camboza. And while there was a purse bid out there, we had the CEO and co-founder, I believe, of Thriller, Ryan Kavanaugh, comes in and swoops the fight up with a winning purse bid of 6.018, I believe, million, that is, my friends. And, it was just like really shocking news and impressive news, considering that Eddie Hearn came in with a purse bid of 3.56 million from Eddie Hearn, and then roughly 2.3 million from Top Rank's Bob Arum. And Thriller snatched it away, and I'm just like flabbergasted by that. And for those of you that don't know, Thriller is the guy, they're the promotional, I think they're an internet startup company, but they seem to be in the event planning, boxing business, promotion business. And they also promoted the Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. heavyweight boxing exhibition that took place back in November. And I think they did like $1.9 million in pay-per-views on that one. So, yeah. So Paul, what is going, and you are absolutely right. Thanks for the correction of the IBF. That was also a sealed bid, by the IBF, right?
Right.
Yeah. So What is a sealed bid? First of all, what is a sealed bid?
Well, ideally, it's literally how it sounds. In a first bid situation, the eligible promoters, which looking at the compendium of different rules and regulations for the article I wrote on this topic, generally requires register with that to do business with that particular sanctioning body, and up to date on fees, and/or pays the one-time non-refundable deposit to even enter into the first bid situation. And as part of that, there's a period of time where you put in bids with the requisite items within them that are literally sealed, and almost like a mini award ceremony. They have their first bid day where they open them up and read them off and see whose package carries the day.
Wow. So kind of like, so Paul, for the listeners, kind of like, it would kind of like be like an NBA, an NFL or NBA draft or something like that. Like
arguably, yeah,
right,
some ways.
Right. Maybe with not all the festivities, but I'm sure there were some backroom festivities that people would not want to be a part of when.
Well, yeah, that's supposed to be part of these things too, but
yeah, man. I mean, so for the listeners, Paul, could you just walk us through what a purse bid actually is? Just like give the most, like, I mean, I know it's going to be hard not to use legalese, and I love your legalese, but if you could just break it down for the layman, what is a purse bid?
Okay, so purse bid, basically, if you have a world champion boxer and you have a number one contender, and especially if they're not the same promoter, the two promoters will try to work out between themselves how they're going to stage the fight and how much everybody's going to get. And the belt or the sanctioning body usually gives a certain period of time before the next defense is due to do that. And if an agreement is not reached between the promoters themselves in that period of time, it goes to what's then called the purse bid, where, as I mentioned a moment ago, all eligible promoters are able to submit bids whether or not they have a promotional interest in the two boxers that would be involved in the championship fight.
Wow.
Was that sufficiently non-lawyerly?
Yeah, man, that was beautifully done.
Good,
Beautifully
good.
done, as usual. Beautifully done, and I think the listeners really, really understood that, and I hope they understood that. Listen, man, like that's a lot of like. Okay, so let's chop that up. The
Okay.
purse bid was for 6.018 million,
Right.
right? So that obviously gets divided up between who? Who gets that money?
Well, so that actually depends on the sanctioning body too. Some of the rules and regulations, if not all of them, have a predetermined percentage split, with usually more greater than 50% going to the champion, and then whatever remainder percentage going to the challenger. Question is how much greater than 50%. So,
Right.
um,
And I think
which
I think in this
what's that?
case, I think in this case, Teofimo Lopez gets 65%, right? So,
Yeah, which is interesting because I read that, but when I was reading the IBF rules yesterday, I thought I saw 75%, but 65% is what I was reading in the press. So it, maybe it was subject to a separate agreement. I'm not sure, but
well, the 10% just
whatever.
vanished. Where'd that 10% go?
Poof.
Maybe that goes to
But,
the sanctioning body, or
now they get a smaller fee for that, and then they get their probably their sanctioning fee on top of that. But
huh?
I'm not sure what happened there. All I know is
Well,
I was reading a lead.
it's purported that Lopez gets 65% of the winning bid.
Right.
So he'll make roughly $3.9 million, right? And
Okay.
then he owes 20% of it, I believe, 20% of it to his promoter, which is Top Rank Incorporated. And
Right.
so that's about, I guess they get about $780 something thousand dollars. Right.
Well, that raises one other quick side note. It's typical in promotional agreements, especially with major promoters like Top Rank, where they'll have a purse bid provision where, in the event that, for whatever reason, the promoter is in a position to make a purse bid, which would have to mean that that particular fighter gets a title shot or has a world title, and they don't get it, as was the case with Top Rank, there's an agreed upon percentage that Top Rank or some other promoter would get for just laying back in the cut after a good faith effort to secure the fight.
Right.
So whether it's 20%, 35%, I've seen it varied. I mean, obviously 20 seems more fair to the fighter. They don't always have this. Fighters obviously have varying leverage depending when they enter into a contract. But
so Lopez gets 65%. Right, which is roughly 3.9 million. He owes Top Rank 20% of that, and then that's about $782,000. Camboza gets roughly 2.1 million, right? A purported $2.1 million. And then guess what? Guess what? Camboza's promoter gets. Lou DiBella gets another 500,000 out of that. So I mean. And then that doesn't include all the other expenses, right? What are some of the other expenses that are going to go down? What happens after? Let's just deal with the $3.9 million that are good, very good,
okay, so,
dear, awesome, most talented Teofimo Lopez gets.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to break down all potential scenarios, I mean, you have. Well, let me start with an asterisk, because a lot of times fighters' training expenses would come out of that, but at least some sanctioning bodies require a projection of training expenses to be built into the bid. So whether it's actually considered a loss is a question, but all things equal, especially for a fight on this level, maybe you'd expect a whole battery of different training expenses, whether it's nutrition, sparring partners of top quality, and things of that nature. Industry standard, at least at least until you get to really big fights. So it might be different for his trainers. Would be a 10% manager. I mean, not 10% manager, 10% trainer fee. They get 10% of it.
Well, remember, Well, remember, would it not be uncommon for a man of Teofimo Lopez Sr.'s stature, who was also the trainer of the year, to get 15% out of that? I
Oh, yeah,
mean,
everything can be negotiated. That's for sure.
right. I mean, he
Uh,
certainly I mean, he's a real guy. He's a real trainer. He's the trainer of the year. He's an amazing guy. 15% was probably not out of reason for him.
no, certainly not. But I mean, but in comparison, take for example Freddie Roach's deal, as I understood it a couple of years ago with Pacquiao. Now Freddie got a mirror. I'll put a mirror with very big air quotes if you could see me, like 1 million to train Pacquiao for, I don't know if it was Mayweather or some other fights.
Right.
But if he actually took 10% at that level, he would probably be getting more than 1 million.
Oh yeah,
So,
he's getting probably 100 million. I mean, at that point,
right.
who knows
So,
what he's got? If he's got a 10% deal for a fighter of
that's all
Pacquiao's,
relative.
yeah, man, for sure, absolutely.
But yeah, so you got whatever the trainer fee is, and maybe the cut man also, and the manager can take up to 33 and a third. Sometimes you have this nebulous advisor fee as well.
Well, he has a management. I'm sure the
Yeah,
management's going to get 20% or something like that.
right.
Management's going to get 20. It could be more depending on the arrangement that they have, but it could be less. But probably, it's safe to say it's somewhere in the 20%. So now you got that. I mean, look at we're figuring out what Teofimo's making on this fight. It's pretty nuts that that us in the media and folks on the sidelines are counting his pennies, man. I feel kind of awkward about counting your pennies, Teofimo Lopez, but I know the folks out there that are listening, the young fighters and people out there, need to get a good handle on what's going on here. So no disrespect in counting your numbers, but we're just trying to really understand how this works. And that's why we have our good friend Paul Haberman Esquire on here to break it down for us. One of the things, Paul, that I know is that we haven't even talked about the tax man.
That's true.
So what does the tax man get typically for the listeners? What do they get? It's like 28%. What do you think?
Oh, that's beyond my skill set. That could vary from state to state and federal. So you're all over the place with that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's about he is. I believe he lives in Nevada and in New York City, so that could be like yin and the yang, man. That could be big trouble.
I partially pay tax in New York, and I can tell you it hurts.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts so bad. I love New York. I'm from Brooklyn. Shout out Brooklyn. But I will tell you, yeah, man, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm from do or die Bed-Stuy. But yeah, good.
My parents are Brooklyn, so I say I'm Brooklyn on both sides, but I'll admit I grew up on Long Island, which Brooklyn's part of, but doesn't want to admit geographically.
Right.
So, you know this.
Yes. But, I do, but what I was trying to get at there was that Brooklyn, they take, man. There's a lot of taxes up there in the city. So yeah, it's
just living there could be a lot of money too, depending which neighborhood, which area.
Right. I know. So all right. So now we have a situation, right? We got that. We've divided out how the money's going to be spent, right? But now we got a little bit of hurt feelings. Have you read about that?
Well, between Top Rank and Lopez?
Yeah, Top Rank Lopez, Top Rank Hearn. There's a lot of hurt feelings going on. Mostly. Yep.
Well, it's interesting to me. It's like, I'm not going to get excited or say this is a typical thing just yet, but what Lopez was able to achieve by basically pushing back on how much Top Rank wanted to stage the fight monetarily. I mean, it's almost like a slightly different setting. It feels like Deshaun Watson or James Harden pushing for a trade or requesting an extension or something like that. It's like all of a sudden, the boxer's got the power. Okay, so all right. Let's see what kind of effect that has going forward. Not too many could claim that level of leverage right now. But
right.
if he was able to pull that off this time, he might be seeing others looking to do something similar.
Yeah, well,
Especially,
he's not. Listen, look, the takeover, man. There's a reason they're called the takeover. There's
yep,
certainly some entrepreneurism going on, and you'd have to think because these are very very bright human beings in the Lopez camp, and
yep,
one of the things I would say is that Teofimo said during a podcast. A recent podcast on the Athletic that he missed Top Rank, right? That he missed he would miss Top Rank, but
yeah,
he was quick to say that he'd miss ESPN more, right? And I'm not really sure. I don't really know what that means. I don't know if that was a shot fired at Top Rank or what it means, but I do know that Top Rank has really must-see TV in his hands with Teofimo Lopez. And I just I don't understand what happened. And, I do understand that putting asses in the seats really does make a difference to Top Rank, but I'm not sure when you're sitting on $90 million a year, right?
mm-hmm.
And the biggest draw of your arguably the biggest draw of your promotion is asking for. He probably asked for $4 million, right? He probably didn't ask for $6 million. He was probably looking to get $4 million or something like that. But the fact is that how do you not take care of a guy like this? He's just so talented and such an iconic figure in the Top Rank brand, right now specifically.
Okay.
So what do you think about that? I mean, what do you think Top Rank's rationale is here?
Well, I mean,
I know that's a little gray for you, Esquire, but work with me, brother.
Well, I think what they may have been seeing in the abstract is that, right or wrong, I'm not passing judgment on Kambosos either way, but they might not have seen him as an attraction that's worthy of phoning up as much money as, say, if Teofimo was facing, I don't know, Haney or Gary Russell Jr. or somebody else, and obviously Gervonta Davis, somebody else in that heavily talented, capable weight range. So they might have seen an opportunity to kind of go easy between bigger fights, and it wound up blowing up in their face here. So,
wow.
Kambosos doesn't ring out here the same way some of these other guys do, and they felt, you could argue they fell asleep at the wheel, or just made a decision that this isn't the fight they're going to throw the Fort Knox at.
Right.
There's plenty of fights in that weight range they could do that with coming up. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I wonder, even with the fact that Thriller won the purse bid for this particular fight, I mean, you're still sitting on there's still a scenario here that when he finishes with this, he goes back to Top Rank and, he's just built up his audience that much more. And I guess Top Rank benefits from that, don't they?
Yeah, arguably so. I mean, if this gets kind of exposure, it could, gets those similar Tyson Jones numbers. I mean, that's huge for Top Rank if they still have if the promotional relationship remains intact after this, which it appears it should. They're just taking this one off. So,
right. Didn't Top Rank? I mean, you would know this because you follow all the legal riffs and spiffs, and you follow all this stuff. But and didn't Terrence Crawford have a similar problem with Top Rank and was in a similar situation?
So, in terms of willing to shell out.
Yeah, willing to shell out. Going through some financial woes, not really like looking to ante up for Crawford. Wasn't that?
I felt like the bigger problem for Crawford. I mean, maybe there was some things like that too, but I mean, you had the elite brass of his division, other than himself, on PBC, and all of a sudden it was like he didn't exist, even though he very much does exist. So I mean,
Yeah.
he was a casualty of boxing's unpopular to fans, endemic among promoters mythology that if you're not signed with a certain handler or whatever, you don't exist. So,
Yeah, really. Right. Well, that's
I mean,
a
it's
mistake.
garbage because
Yeah.
if all those guys were in the mix, Terrence Crawford, I mean, Errol Spence, all the Porter's obviously been in the mix with basically everybody except Crawford so far. It's with all those guys active and fighting each other, you could have had a similar era to Trinidad.
Oh, for
Whitaker, De La
sure.
Hoya, Corte, but
Sean Porter.
it's been largely bungled already. So
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, Sean Porter wasn't. They were kind of not being too kind to him as well in terms of,
right.
the amount of money that he felt he deserved for any number of fights that they tried to offer him. I mean, he's an amazing Sean Porter, man. He's must see TV as well, but they're not adding it up. And I get that we're in a pandemic and we don't have the audience, but I also get that if you already have an established $90 million a year contract with ESPN, I mean, the product is really important. So there may need to be some reallocation of funds, and where those funds need to get spent properly, or at least where there's the most bang for your buck, because these guys can fight, man. I just don't want to see them. I just want to see them on the big stage. I just want to see them all working and fighting. And
well, especially in that weight range, there's too much talent for them to just keep taking stay busy fights. This should be the last one that's allowed for a while if Kambosos turns out to be a stay busy fight. So,
well, listen, if you're going to get $6 million or more for a stay busy fight, that's pretty damn good.
I would say,
right? Wouldn't you agree? I mean, that's hats off. Yeah. Hats off to the Lopez team, man, for making that happen. And I mean, Top Rank gets credit for bringing him along correctly and putting him in the right fights. And they've been a great promoter up until now. So
yep.
I hope it works out for them. And I mean, there's just a lot. I heard that this fight, that the Kambosos fight, they may be looking at that to go on the undercard of the Tyson Holyfield card. Is that true?
Is that what they're talking about for the main? I thought they were talking about one of those YouTube guys being in the main.
Well, that's the other. Okay, so I've heard murmurings on the wire about it might be on the Tyson Holyfield fight, which, by the way, shout out Mike Tyson, favorite fighter of the world of all time, and still want to get on Hot Box. Hopefully, you're going to have me on your show one day. But more importantly, I'd love to see the Tyson Holyfield fight, because that's gotta happen, man. The number 3 is for me. Number 3 is for me. I just made a rhyme. And then they were also talking about it being on the Jake Paul versus Ben Askren, I guess his name, Ben Askren, the MMA guy.
I thought today that was wasn't Antonio Tarver was fighting somebody now too, one of the MMA guys.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't really know where it's going to go.
Options.
But just for the listeners, out there, I just want you to know that we are keeping up the best we can on the hearsay, because as you notice, when I talk to Paul about hearsay, he's not a big hearsay guy. He's more like factual. Paul's more into like black and white. Okay, what's the law? This is that. He's not really. You're not really a big hearsay guy. I love that about you.
No.
Yeah, I love that. Like, give me the facts, man. Just tell me the facts, and I'll straighten them out. Yeah. I mean, there's just I don't know. I just keep thinking about the tax man. That's all I'm saying. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Teofimo will end up with probably like $2 million, right?
Yeah, which is still a good day, but certainly a bite taken out of what you would expect. So,
yeah, I mean, if he ends up with if he doesn't pay the Uber driver the way I calculated the math, it's probably like $2.7 million is where he'll end up. And I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but I just did some rough math, and I think it's somewhere right around there. You know.
Remember, if he comes away with the win, it's on to any of the guys they just named, or any number of other talented fighters in that weight range as the next up. So
what happens if Teofimo, just let's round this conversation out a little, Paul. What happens if Teofimo Lopez either gets lured somewhere else or just makes a professional decision that he no longer wants to be in the Top Rank brand? What happens then?
Well, either two words or one word if it's hyphenated. I'm not sure which one. Buyout. Because if there's time left on the contract, they're not going to just let him go.
Wow.
There will be compensation to be had, and I'm sure that won't go cheap. Most of those don't go public, but if you'll remember a couple of years ago, I believe it was Luis Ortiz wanted to get out of his agreement with Golden Boy, and they agreed to let him go, but if I recall the number right, it was for $1 million. So, so figure that's a top flight heavyweight contender without a title a couple of years ago, and now you might have one of the top names in any weight class that want to beg out. Somebody's going to have to pony up if Top Rank was going to do that. So, probably be pretty payday for Top Rank in exchange. So, not to say they wouldn't. Makes dollars, it makes sense if they don't have a willing dance partner, but somebody would be paying exceptionally for that, and in turn, you might have to figure that to the extent he'd be getting any more soft touches now anyway, Teofimo would no longer be getting soft touches to make that buyout worthwhile. So
right, and then that buyout's going to be whatever time is remaining on the contract, right?
You're right, and extrapolate out the number, how much they could really expect to make from him during that time.
Right.
So, yep.
Well,
yep.
I mean, that's listen, Paul.
Well, the other thing too is championship. There's certain triggers that'll extend contracts. So they might say, you're not just buying out the 8 months, year and a half. You're also buying out that extension option we have. So,
right. Well, and now he just got for a mandatorily ordered fight. He just got $6 million.
Right.
So how does that factor into the potential earnings going forward? I guess that's the new barometer, right? That becomes the new benchmark for what he's going to earn. If you're on the other side, if you're on Top Rank's legal team, right?
Yep.
Wow.
If you're on Top Rank's legal team, you also want that as confidential. If people could actually keep it quiet, how much the buyout is. So
yeah, for sure. And why would you want it to be confidential like that?
I mean, I just want business. For me personally, if I'm representing the promoters or whoever, I don't want their business out in the street.
Right.
But because then people know, we can get up to a certain boiling point as long as somebody gets pony up X amount, try to project it out. We can just leave. Like,
yeah.
No,
complicated stuff, man. It's not easy being a promoter, and this is exactly why it's not easy being a promoter. It's not easy being a fighter either, because it's just it's not easy on either side, but it just seems to be something. The plot thickens, and I think there's going to be a lot more coming down the road on this particular topic. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And interestingly, one of the few other fighters in the sport right now that I can imagine having such a high card is also with Top Rank right now, and that's Tyson Fury. But he seems, seems content for the time being. But who knows? Fury's another one where he could pretty much demand what he wants at this point. It feels like so.
Yeah, well,
he's been following.
Well, he's only got. I mean, I believe he only has 2 more years on his contract. 2 more fights on his contract remaining. So once he's done with the 2 more fights, he's done.
Right.
So I think it's a little bit of a different scenario from what I've been told, is that he's got 2 more fights on his contract, and once those 2 fights are done, he's basically done with the contract. And the interesting thing about that is he came out recently, I believe, and said that he doesn't care who he fights, that he just wants 2 fights before the end of the year, and as long as he gets those 2 fights, he's perfectly happy. So
I thought I saw Joshua might be in the queue, so he should be especially happy if that actually becomes one of the 2 this year, or both of the 2.
Well,
that'd be fine also, I'm sure.
But imagine if AJ, right? If AJ, Andy Ruiz, or Deontay Wilder, none of those 3 actually get any kind of phone call. Like, it doesn't go through. I'm just speculating, because I think they're going to announce something probably at the end of this weekend after the big Canelo fight is over. But I don't really know. I think they will announce something, and it'll be pretty big news about who Fury's going to fight. So, I mean, I have my thoughts about how that's going to go down, but right now I'm just going to make the plot a little thicker until we, round back to the next episode of the Boxing Breakdown, because, they're going to make an announcement pretty soon. You heard it here, right here on the Boxing Breakdown.
Okay. I heard it here first. Yep.
Yeah.
He's got any number of worthy contenders. I hope it's one of the ones you mentioned, because I think that while there's a lot of promising heavyweights, a lot of them are a little green right now to be going up to Tyson Fury already, that are of the younger breed. So
yeah. So who do you got? I mean,
seasoning.
tell me, who do you have? If you put, let's go with Tyson Fury against Anthony Joshua. Who you got?
Who do I like? God. Fury's just an unusual package. And although it didn't look like it earlier in his career, and if you're a mere mortal, it didn't look like that at the end of the first Wilder fight. The guy seems to take a pretty good shot. He doesn't let people take a lot of good shots on him. First of all, he's hard to hit even when he's right in front of you. I feel like he finds a way against Joshua, but at the same time, I mean, wouldn't be surprising to me if Joshua were able to finish on his own punching power what Wilder perhaps couldn't do, and actually stay on him if he's got him hurt, and finish him off, which Wilder's usually pretty good at, but that didn't succeed in that particular fight. So
all right, so Tyson Wilder. What do you got on Tyson Wilder?
What, if they fight a third time?
Yeah, if they fight again. What do you got?
I feel like Fury's got his number. I mean, he's just too fundamentally sound. I think he's got the confidence at this point.
Right.
And I'd hate to say it, because I was at Wilder's fight with Dominic Brazil. I mean, the man could knock down the moon from the sky with one punch, but it just doesn't seem to work with Fury, even if it probably works with almost anybody else in the division. So,
yeah, no, I mean, someone who gets left out of the conversation for quite a, in a lot of the conversations is Ruiz, right?
Well, the interesting, I'm not even sure what to make of him after the rematch, but what I could say but I'm inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt, because I remember when he first signed to fight Joshua on short notice after Big Baby had his issues, I was like, Ruiz, that's not just somebody bringing on short notice. I was like, that guy gave Joseph Parker hell.
And that
you don't just write off Ruiz and say, okay, let's plug him in there. That's not a good idea. And sure enough, it wasn't. So
yeah, and that was before he was with the Reynosos.
Yeah. And look, maybe you say, look, the rematch was like Douglas and Holyfield. All right, you did your world tour and came back out of whack. get back to the gym and see what you can do again going forward. So,
yeah, man, this is going to be a topic. We're gonna dig into all of that heavyweight action pretty soon because it's about to heat up next week. I have a feeling. So keep an eye out for that. And Paul, man, I want to just again thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you as always for having me. I
yeah,
always have a good time on here.
I really love when you come on and I know that the listeners have benefited greatly from your points and from some of your legal discussion around boxing, and it's just always
good to hear.
As much as I love being in the gym training, I really, really do love the business and the business on the outside of the ring, and it's just always a blessing to talk to you and get your perspective on things, man. Thank you so much for being on the program, for real.
Thank you as always for having me. I enjoy my time here.
Yeah. So, folks, you heard it right here on the Boxing Breakdown. And until next time, peace and love. And we are out. All right, Paul. You be well. Love to the family.
You as well. Likewise. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.
All right.
Management.
Have a good weekend.
Promotions, fan reactions, upcoming events, matchups, future boxing stars, title fights, state of the boxing world, and all the stuff you don't see when you watch boxing. This podcast is released each week on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live streamed on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook Live. It's the Boxing Breakdown, hosted by Mark Roxey.